Officer, that bag contains classified federal documents. You don't have clearance to view them.
Classified documents?
Unit 19, stand by. Do not continue the search.
Danielle Brooks had been through worse. She had served in Afghanistan, worked secret missions in Europe, and once stopped a man wearing a bomb vest from blowing himself up. But nothing in her years of training prepared her for the foolishness she was about to face on Willow Creek Drive at 9:47 p.m. on a quiet Tuesday night. The red and blue lights flashing in her rearview mirror made her tighten her grip on the steering wheel. Not from fear, but from wariness. She knew what this was. Her dark skin and expensive car were the only reasons she was being stopped tonight. The police car pulled up behind her. The officer walked toward her window with that kind of swagger, chest out, hand near his belt, full of fake confidence. His name tag read Officer Carter. He looked about 26, with a perfect haircut and a smirk that said he thought he was in charge. Danielle rolled her window down exactly 4 inches. Her hands stayed visible on the steering wheel, at 10 and 2, calm and steady. She had trained in reading people's faces, spotting lies, and controlling fear. But none of that changed the fact that she had to perform this careful routine, because one wrong move could cost her life. The flashlight hit her face. No hello, no license and registration, just a hard beam of light and a stare that lasted too long. "You know why I pulled you over?" Carter asked. Danielle knew. Of course she did. It wasn't about her driving. It was about the picture he built in his head when he saw her. Black woman. Nice car. Wrong neighborhood. That was all it took. She had noticed his patrol car following her 3 blocks earlier. She had seen his interest grow the moment he caught sight of her. "No, officer, I don't," she said evenly. Her voice was calm, steady, her field voice. It gave nothing away. Carter's flashlight wandered over her car like he was hunting for treasure. His gaze stopped at her laptop bag in the passenger seat, then her gym bag in the back. He saw her work badge flipped face down in the cup holder. "Your taillight's out," he said. It wasn't. She'd had her car inspected 3 days ago. Everything had passed. But Danielle also knew that reaching for the papers could be misread as a threat. Too many people had died over that kind of misunderstanding. "I just had my car inspected, officer. Everything passed." "Well, I saw what I saw," he said sharply. She'd heard that tone before, from men who needed to be right more than they needed to be honest. She had faced enemy agents with more sense than this man. A second officer stepped out of the patrol car, a shorter man with a round belly and nervous eyes. He stood behind her vehicle, hand on his belt, scanning the empty street as if danger hid behind the mailbox. "License and registration," Carter said. Danielle moved slowly, speaking each step out loud. "I'm reaching for my purse now. It's on the passenger seat." Carter's hand twitched toward his gun. Danielle kept her movements smooth and calm, passing him her license and registration without a word. He read the license carefully. Her address was only 4 blocks away. She lived here. She had bought this house with money earned from years of dangerous federal work. Yet, even now, standing a few minutes from home, she was treated like a stranger, or worse, a suspect. "Step out of the vehicle," Carter said. Danielle hesitated for a fraction of a second. She knew what came next. This was no longer about a taillight. This was about power. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stepped out. At 5'7", she met Carter's eyes directly. That seemed to irritate him. "Where are you coming from tonight?" "Work?" "What kind of work?" he asked. "I'm a federal employee," she replied flatly. His eyes narrowed. "Federal employee doing what?" "That's not relevant to a traffic stop, officer." His face turned red. Danielle could see his pride bleeding through. She'd seen that same reaction in rooms full of men who couldn't handle being questioned by someone who didn't fit their expectations. "I'm making it relevant," he snapped. You're driving a high-end car, being evasive, and you're in a neighborhood that's had recent break-ins. There it was, the real reason. She didn't look like she belonged here. Never mind that her property taxes were probably higher than his salary. Never mind that her job required top-level clearance. All he saw was skin color and suspicion. The shorter partner started circling the car, pressing his face close to the windows, pretending to look for something suspicious. Danielle's phone buzzed in her pocket. She didn't move. But she knew who it was, her agency. The CIA tracked all their field officers' GPS, even when off duty. If she wasn't home on time, someone noticed. And right now, someone at headquarters was seeing her location frozen for 15 minutes. You seem nervous, Carter said. His forehead was shining with sweat. I'm not nervous. I'm tired, and I'd like to go home. Home where? 4 blocks from here, the address on my license. Uh-huh. He said it like she was lying. He walked around her car again, flashlight sweeping every surface. This is a nice car. Real nice. What did you say you do again? I didn't. I said I'm a federal employee. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting without a warrant or a valid reason for this stop. Carter stopped walking. His jaw tightened. His partner looked up, sensing trouble brewing. You know what? I think I smell marijuana. Danielle almost laughed. It was such a lazy, predictable excuse. She had never smoked in her life. Her job's random drug tests made sure of that. But now, he created an excuse to search her car. There's no marijuana in my vehicle, she said. I'll be the judge of that. Turn around and put your hands on the car. Her stomach sank, not in fear, but in calculation. This was the turning point. The moment where everything she said or did could be twisted against her. She turned around slowly, placing her hands on the car's cool surface. Carter began patting her down. His hands stayed in places they didn't need to be. It wasn't a safety check. It was power. Humiliation. She clenched her jaw, saying nothing. Every second of this was being recorded on their body cameras. And somewhere in Washington, D.C., her GPS was lighting up on someone's screen. Carter started searching her car. He unzipped her laptop bag and pulled out a folder labeled in red, Top Secret //SCI. Officer, that bag contains classified federal documents. You don't have clearance to view them, Danielle warned. Carter blinked at the folder, not understanding what he was holding. Classified documents. Lady, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but he flipped it open. Inside were pages full of intelligence terms. SIGINT, human, operational routes. Words he didn't understand. His partner leaned closer and went pale. He did understand what those markings meant. Carter, maybe we should, the partner began. Shut up, Carter barked, still staring at the pages. His radio crackled. Unit 19, what's your status on the traffic stop? Unit 19, status is fine. Conducting a search, Carter answered. Unit 19, be advised. We've received multiple calls about your stop. What's the driver's information? Multiple calls. That meant the system had reacted. Someone had called the police chief, who called the watch commander, who was now trying to find out why one of his officers was harassing a federal agent. Driver is Danielle Brooks, African-American female. Unit 19, standby. Carter looked up. The change in his face was immediate. His confidence cracked. He looked at the folder, then back at Danielle. What is this? I told you, she said calmly. Classified documents that you just illegally searched. The radio buzzed again, a deeper voice now. Unit 19, this is Lieutenant Moore. Secure the scene and wait for my arrival. Do not continue the search. Do not touch the vehicle. Do not take further action. Acknowledge. Carter's hand shook as he lifted the radio. Copy that. His partner had already stepped back, trying to distance himself from the disaster. He knew this was bad. Career-ending bad. Danielle stood still, silent. Her training told her to let the process play out. The officer had just broken federal law on camera, and soon the fallout would begin. The quiet night air felt heavy. No one spoke. Officer Carter stood frozen beside Danielle's car, still clutching the folder marked Top Secret like it might explode. His partner hovered a few steps away, staring at the ground, pretending he wasn't part of this mess. 7 long minutes later, 2 new vehicles pulled up behind the police car. The first was a black SUV, the second an unmarked sedan. From the SUV stepped a woman in her 50s, her hair gray and pulled tight into a bun. Her uniform carried authority. Lieutenant Moore. Her expression said she'd already had enough of this nonsense. Behind her came 2 people in dark suits, clearly federal agents. The kind who didn't need to flash badges for anyone to know who they were. Lieutenant Moore walked straight up to Officer Carter. "Give me the folder," she said. Her tone was calm, but sharp. Carter handed it over with shaking hands. Moore glanced at the red letters across the top, and her face changed from anger to dread. She turned to Danielle. "Ma'am, are you injured?" "No," Danielle said quietly. "Did the officer harm you in any way?" "He conducted an inappropriate search of my person and illegally searched my vehicle. He also opened classified materials without clearance." Moore's eyes closed for a second. She looked like someone doing the math on how much trouble this would bring to her department. One of the federal agents stepped forward, a tall man with the build of someone who used to be in the Marines. "Officer Brooks, I'm Agent Ryan from the FBI's National Security Division," he said. "We're taking over from here. We'll need to secure your vehicle and those documents. The body camera footage from both officers is now classified material." Carter's voice cracked. "Wait, what? This is my investigation." Agent Ryan looked at him with cold calm. "Officer Carter, you have no investigation. You stopped a CIA officer without cause, searched her car illegally, and accessed top-secret materials. You are now the subject of an investigation." The words hit Carter like a punch. His face turned white. His partner took another quiet step backward, trying to fade out of sight. Lieutenant Moore turned to Carter, her voice low and deadly. "Your body camera. Hand it over. Now." He obeyed. His hands were trembling. Moore handed the camera to Agent Ryan, who placed it into an evidence bag as if it were dangerous. The second agent started taking pictures of the scene, the car, the officers, the ground, everything. Danielle finally stepped away from her car. Agent Ryan nodded to her respectfully. "We'll need you to come in for a debrief. Your director has already been notified. We'll transport you and secure your vehicle. The breach must be documented and contained." Contained. Danielle knew that word well. It meant they were going to assess what Carter had seen, how serious it was, and what national security risks it created. Lieutenant Moore pulled Carter aside. Though she spoke quietly, Danielle still caught fragments of her words. Suspended, investigation, federal charges, termination. Carter didn't argue. His partner was already being separated by another supervisor, likely to ensure they couldn't match their stories later. Danielle stood by calmly, her hands folded. Every second, she grew more aware of the size of what had just happened. One man's bias had turned a traffic stop into a national security incident. Danielle sat in a cold conference room inside a federal building. She had been questioned by agents, lawyers, and finally her own director, a sharp woman named Director Hale. Hale looked like she hadn't blinked in 10 minutes. Danielle explained everything, from the flashing lights to the illegal search, down to the moment Carter opened the folder. The documents he accessed were from an active operation, she said quietly. The room went still. Agent Ryan leaned forward. "He saw code names?" "Yes," Danielle said. but without context. You won't understand what you read. Director Hale sighed. That doesn't matter. Protocol says the operation must be reviewed. Assets notified. Security levels reset. She rubbed her temple. All because one police officer couldn't respect the limits of his authority. The next few days moved fast. The FBI took over. Carter and his partner were both placed on leave within 24 hours. The story was buried deep under ongoing federal investigation, but inside law enforcement circles, everyone knew. Carter's body camera told the whole story. The unnecessary stop, the made-up excuse about marijuana, the search, and the illegal opening of the classified folder. The evidence was airtight. Within 2 days, Officer Carter was suspended without pay. A week later, he was fired. The city had no choice. Federal law had been broken. The FBI and the Justice Department wanted to make an example out of him. Carter hired a lawyer who shouted about police rights and reasonable suspicion. 3 days later, the lawyer quit after watching the footage. There was nothing to defend. The local police union released a short statement saying Carter was a good officer under pressure. That statement quietly disappeared after the FBI announced federal charges were being prepared. Carter's partner, Officer Mills, was suspended for 30 days for failure to intervene. When he returned, he applied for early retirement and left the force. He couldn't bear the attention or the whispers in the station. The federal case moved slowly. The U.S. Attorney's Office reviewed every angle. Normally, it's hard to charge police officers, but this time, there was no gray area. Carter had opened classified government materials on camera. 14 months later, he stood in court. The once proud officer looked smaller now, his face pale, his suit too big. He pleaded guilty to unauthorized possession of classified information, a serious federal offense. The plea deal kept him out of prison, but came with 2 years of probation, a $10,000 fine, and a permanent ban from ever working in law enforcement or security again. His certification was revoked, his name entered into a federal database. Just like that, his career was gone. Carter still told people he had just been doing his job. But the footage told a different story, a story of arrogance, bias, and abuse of power. He hadn't just stopped a driver that night. He had stopped the wrong woman, the one with the power to expose him. The night after the case was finally closed, Danielle sat alone in her apartment. The glow from the city below spilled across her walls. Her cup of tea had gone cold. She hadn't touched it. She thought about how quickly things had changed. One moment, she was on her way home, tired but calm. The next, she was fighting for her dignity, her career, and her life. Even though the law had sided with her, she didn't feel victorious. Not really. The damage had already been done. The fear in that moment, the sound of his voice, the invasion of her space, those things didn't fade easily. Danielle had always known that power could be misused. But that night, she saw how deeply that misuse ran, how easily one person's prejudice could ignite a chain reaction all the way up to national security. She wasn't angry anymore. She was focused. A few weeks later, Danielle stood in front of a small camera in her living room. She took a deep breath and pressed record. "My name is Danielle Brooks," she began, "and this is my story." Her voice was calm but strong. She told the story from start to finish, not as an agent, but as a woman who had been wronged and who wanted change. She spoke about the fear of being pulled over for no reason, the helplessness of being searched without cause, the humiliation of being treated as a suspect for existing in her own skin. But she also spoke about accountability, about justice that doesn't end with one officer losing his job, but continues until systems themselves are rebuilt. The truth, she said softly, is that power is a test, and too many people fail it. She ended with a challenge. If you believe in justice, speak up. If you believe in dignity, protect it. If you believe in equality, fight for it. Not just for yourself, but for everyone who doesn't have a voice. It's a call. It's a reminder that we are still standing, still rising. She paused, then smiled faintly. Because when we rise, we don't rise alone. She uploaded the video. Within hours, the clip began to spread. People shared it, reposted it, quoted it. Not because it was loud, but because it was honest. Danielle didn't plan to become a public figure, but overnight, she became one. Journalists wanted interviews. Activists reached out. Even government agencies quietly expressed regret over what had happened. She received hundreds of messages, some from people who had been through the same kind of treatment, others who said her courage gave them strength. She read every message she could. Some made her cry. Others made her smile. But what touched her most were the messages from young girls, Black, Latina, Asian, who said, "I want to be like you when I grow up." That was when she realized that her story had become bigger than her. It was no longer about one traffic stop, one officer, or one night. It was about all the people who had been silenced and ignored, all the people who didn't have the badge, the job title, or the platform to defend themselves. Months later, Danielle left the agency. She didn't resign out of fear. She did it because she had a new mission. She began working with organizations that trained people, especially women and minorities, on how to handle police stops, how to document them safely, and how to stand up for their rights without violence. She built partnerships with legal aid groups, mental health counselors, and local schools. A movement dedicated to shining light on injustice and guiding young people toward empowerment. Every week, Danielle released new videos. She used plain, honest language. She shared stories, some painful, some hopeful, but always truthful. She refused to let the fear of that night silence her. One quiet afternoon, a letter arrived. No return address, just her name, written neatly. She opened it. Inside was a short note. "I wanted to say I'm sorry. I was wrong. I let my pride and fear guide me. I've lost everything, but I know I deserved it. Carter." Danielle sat for a long time, reading the words again and again. There was no anger in her anymore, just a strange calm. She picked up her pen and wrote a single sentence in reply. "Accountability begins with truth. I hope you find yours." She never mailed it. She folded it, placed it in the same folder he had once opened, the one marked Top Secret, and locked it away in her desk. It was over. Behind her, a giant screen showed clips from her videos, moments of strength, pain, and triumph. She spoke clearly, her voice echoing through the hall. Change doesn't begin with power. It begins with courage. One person's courage can shift a room. 100 can shift a city. 1,000 can shift a nation. The crowd clapped and cheered. She smiled. And when we rise, when we truly rise, we lift each other higher. The audience rose to their feet, clapping, some in tears, others smiling with hope. For the first time in years, Danielle felt peace. The same peace she had been denied that night on the roadside. She looked out over the crowd and whispered, mostly to herself, "Justice isn't a moment. It's a movement."